Hey, Andrew.
What's up, man?
Well, you're in looks like a better location than me,
Just on my porch.
on
It's
the
nice,
front porch,
nice to
watching
have
everybody go by. Are you the guy that yells at people to get off your lawn?
pretty much. Like, don't let your dog pee on my grass.
Yeah, you're peeking through the windows.
Hey, no, real talk.
Hey,
I was eating lunch with some of our youth and their neighbor. We were all sitting socially distanced in their front yard, and their neighbor was literally like peeking through the window, like staring at us. And I was like, "Hey, your neighbor's creeping on us. It's a little strange. A little
they
strange."
just they they are also yearning for social interaction, so they were just jealous. Is what I'm gonna. That's what I'm putting out there into the world. Uh, well, man, I know that you have an event coming up this Sunday, so I wanted you to kind of run us through that real quick because I think it's really innovative idea, and I wanted everyone that isn't in youth to hear the brilliance of what you got going on. Tell them a little bit about how you prepared, and then we'll kind of jump into to talking about Luke's sermon on Isaiah 55.
Yeah, so we're gonna host a drive-in movie night for youth and their families this coming Sunday. We decided that we need to take a break from the digital stuff and see if we can find some way to get people physically in a space together, but in a safe way. And a drive-in movie feels like a pretty solid idea. And we're able to lay out guidelines that says, hey, make sure you stay by your car. If you need to use a restroom, you have to wear a mask, like going to and from. Like we're able to kind of control those variables a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to show The Incredibles. Starting, people start arriving at 8:45. We'll start the movie around 9:15. And we're just going to hang out in the back parking lot. We bought a giant 25-foot movie screen. We have an FM transmitter, so we don't have to worry about blasting loud noises into the world. You just sit in your car, or you bring a lawn chair and just sit by your vehicle and just enjoy a movie. We'll
That's
let people
awesome.
park near like their friend groups, but as long as they have to stay by or at their vehicles, those kind of deals. So
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's really the first time that we've gotten kids together physically since this happened, and so I'm nervous, but also pretty stoked to see everyone together.
I bet I know a few college football fans that are going to be asking you if you're going to do this on Saturdays at the church parking lot. They're like, I want to watch with my friends, but will you put the game on? But it's too bright for that. We'll have to tell them no, it's okay, but we'll try our best.
We'll show replays because
Yeah, replays.
football is iffy at best right now.
Exactly. We don't even know if it's going to happen, but I think that's a really great idea. I'm excited. I'm going to be there Sunday night. I think Luke's going to be there, and bunch of youth. So pretty excited about that. The screen looks good. We did a test run
Next
on
up,
Tuesday.
half the daggum size of the sanctuary. You can't see the chancel or the choir loft when you set it up.
Exactly. The thing is massive. Andrew had it right in front of the altar. You physically couldn't see anything behind it except the top of the rose window. So that was pretty crazy to go down there and see that. What's that old Shakespeare? Oh, I can't even think of it, but there's one where the pretty actor is acting and singing, and the less good looking is behind the curtain, and then they pull the curtain back. It's the same trope in Wizard of Oz. That's what we're going to start doing on Sundays. We're going to blow the screen up. We're going to project on there, a good looking set of ministers, but then the rest of us will be on the backside. I'll having our voices for radio. That's what we're made for. But I can make these jokes because no one watches. I'm just kidding. To the people that are watching this, I'm really happy that you do. We're excited to keep making them. All right. So Luke talked a little bit about this verse from Isaiah 55, 10 through 13. It was beautiful. And he opens up talking about dreams. And so I wanted to ask you, how are you sleeping during COVID? I know for me, it goes up and down. Some weeks I sleep like an angel. Mostly it's a lot of anxiety. So my dreams have been reflective. The other day I was dreaming about being with a group of people. Like we were all out somewhere. I don't know. Have you had any weird dreams during this whole endeavor?
I don't typically remember my dreams, but I did tell you one before about like going to one of the local breweries and none of the taps worked, and the only thing they had was like a weird lemonade. Like, so that was strange. But I also had a fly fishing rod with a there wasn't a fly on it, there was something super heavy, so I couldn't cast it right. It was very stressful. I woke up very stressed. And this was last night, so that's the one I can remember.
Ugh.
Overall, like, I think I've slept moderately okay. But I go in cycles. Sometimes I'm good,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm not. It just depends on what's happening.
Yeah, dreams. Luke kind of went through the science of it all. It's like the stored memory, the long-term memory, the short-term memory, and then all of the other things in between, and they're just kind of colliding. So to me, I'm gonna be an armchair therapist here about your dreams. The being at a brewery and all the taps are gone. That just kind of seems like what's happening right now. We're glad to be here. It's just not where we exactly wanted to be. So that's what. So, well, that's good. Well, the question I had kind of revolves around a Buechner quote. Luke started with Buechner and ended with Craddock. He made the joke. He was trying to hit the bookend with both of Rob's favorites. I think he did a good job. But Craddock was saying that the rarest of all dreams is when what we experience in the dream is truth. It only can be described as truth, right? And it's kind of a transcendent form of dreaming. And he gave a whole example of Buechner in the hotel. In one of the rooms, he felt nothing but like happiness, and he goes to the different rooms. And I think there's something in that the best form of dreaming, the most pure, but also the rarest, is when what we experience can only be described as truth. So I wonder, have you had any dreams about like what you see the ministry of Central as a whole, and the youth ministry? What is your dream for them? When you look in your mind's eye, that you can only see like, this is the truth of who we actually are, and this is where we're headed.
Yeah. I think about like things we've experienced and seen glimpses of and had like taste of. Like, you went with me to Collide last year, where you had a diverse group of young people together that lived liturgically and in a rhythm, like a monastic rhythm, where they would pray, they would eat, and then they would serve, and then they would learn, they'd worship. It was such a beautiful picture of what I believe God's vision for youth ministry is, where you break down barriers of ethnicity, of sexual orientation, of race, of national identities. But kids from Korea, Africa, from all over the place.
Yeah.
Socioeconomic, didn't matter if you're rich or poor. Everyone was grungy and dirty and did the work.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful depiction of what I really do think youth ministry should and could look like. And I think about how the pandemic has really and truly upended and torn down all of these kind of idols that we've created in youth ministry. I mean, we can't do anything that we would normally do. We can't eat together. We can't go on trips. We can't play goofy games. We can't, not everything that people think youth ministry is, we cannot do, which means in some weird way, like, God's kind of pushing us to go, hey, like, something has to happen. There needs to be something different, because ministry with adolescents does not need to end. And so I think of things like conversations we're having about how we can partner with schools to be a resource, things like that, like, especially as kids are in high school and middle school in Asheville City, they're not going to go to a physical classroom. So
Yeah.
people need good news. It's just, instead of us saying, here's the good news for you, it's us asking what would be good news to you? Because in a lot of ways, like, Christ is the physical representation of good news. It's just, instead of us dictating that, we're seeking, we're listening out for God's whispers through the voices of other people, trying to meet their needs.
Yeah. No, that's well said. And that kind of dovetails into my like last thought question thing I have for you. And, Luke was really trying to bring us back to, like the beauty of the words in Isaiah 55. And it's really easy to picture here in the mountains. But like you were saying, Christ is the embodiment of goodness. And a lot of times we only see Christ or hear the whispers of God through others. And it's really difficult when we're, distant like this to do that. and Luke kept kind of circling back to, God can make all things good, which I think he can. And then he takes this excursus and he says, I want to talk really quickly about karaoke. And I was like, okay, Luke, where are you going with this? And then I thought he was going to sing, we're going to throw up some prayers and of thanks that it didn't happen. But
some Sweet Caroline come over.
Yeah, exactly. But he was kind of saying, how funny is it that we can recall the familiar tunes, the familiar sounds of these silly songs that people sing on karaoke. And that got me thinking, you and I play trivia together every week on Tuesdays with a group of friends over Zoom. And that requires us to come up with all this useless knowledge. It's knowledge that really, when are we going to use it, but we can just recall it so quickly. We can
use it once a week.
Once a week we can bring it to the forefront of our mind. And, Luke took that silliness and he kind of makes it more serious, but it's something that's so interesting. And he asks, when did we forget that God could make all things good? When did we stop hearing, the voice of God or the sweet sounds of God's voice in the world, and kind of how do we circle back? And when did we forget that God could change, thorns into the cypress tree, like it says in Isaiah, that God can make all things work together for goodness. And we can remember all these other silly things, but we're so quick to forget, the goodness of God. I thought that was, really fascinating. And so I love, how you're trying to keep that at the forefront of the minds of our youth, and our whole church as a witness to say, life's given us lemons. We're going to make lemonade, not the weird kind from Andrew's dream, but it's going to be good lemonade, and so my question kind of comes down to, like, what are some ways that you've been seeing, during this COVID that's reminding you God's making all things work together for good? God is still speaking in the world. The Holy Spirit is still moving in the world. What are some of those things? Give me some good news.
Well, I guess like a couple things. One, I think I pushed back a little bit on that part of Luke's sermon because I don't think we've forgotten those things. I think that we just tend to, if we forget anything, we forget it's God who does those things, and we see the things in other places, and we look for those things.
Yeah.
Places. I think we still understand that there's something out there that's working for good in the world and to bring it into harmony. I think we understand in a lot of ways that, and we know deep in our hearts, if you listen to if you listen to songs, if you watch TV shows, there are undercurrents in our culture and society that says these things are true, but we've just allowed those things to say what about is true, and instead of allowing God to say, actually, what about love? What about the way the world works synchronously, syncing up together? What about that is important? But we allow those other voices to overtake God's voice. And it's kind of like we need a retuning. I think that's why I miss church the most. I always tell our youth, this church is like practice. It's not, when you go to practice, I was always taught you got to practice how you play. And church is where you practice what it means to be in the world. That's why you say the things you do in the liturgy. That's why you greet people by passing the peace. That's why it's an open table. That's why we give. We don't give to just uphold the church's budget. We give because we practice a spirit and a way of giving. And so I push back on that a little bit, Luke Lingle. And would love.
That's why we do the talk back. For once, someone pushed back. At least it wasn't on me. That means my record's still spotless. Luke, that's on you, man.
And I think in regards to where I see those things happening in the world, the good news, I remember when all this first happened, hearing stories about the resurrection of the kitchen table and families playing together and experiencing life together. I saw it in the outpouring of desires to help where people needed help. I see it in my life where I got to know my neighbors a lot more than I ever have, and we've helped each other out in more ways than one. We've learned that and I think you see this in the struggle over things like mask, and that like we had a period of time to where we were willing to be selfless, and now all of a sudden you're starting to see pushback on that again.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's hard, but I think you see a whole lot of people sticking up for that and saying, actually, no, this is loving your neighbor.
Yeah. This
I
is
see,
what we practice for.
yeah. And so I see it in a lot of places. I see it over Instagram with my favorite musicians doing free shows to raise money for local event venues, you know,
Hmm.
that are still not open. It's there. It's in the very same way, you know, I talked about retuning, you know, a part of it is just learning to see through the lens of grace and love, as opposed to just, because it's really easy right now to see through the lens of despair,
Yeah.
opposed to one of hope. A little VBS pitch there. So I think it's a lot more prevalent than we realize, and I think it's our job as the church to call attention and to partner
Yeah.
in those movements of grace.
No, I agree. I really, and I think you're exactly right where we've been, uh, and I also want to say pushing back is good. And that's part of the practice, right? Because you didn't say Luke was wrong. You said, I disagree. Here's why. We're always going through the motions to try to figure out how we can be someone in the world. And right now we've been challenged. Like, well, you've been saying you like love your neighbor. And you hear that at church. You've been saying, blessed are the poor. We went through a whole Beatitudes thing last year. The faces of God. We've done all of this. We've learned all this, and now we're kind of being called to task. Are you ready to show all the things that you learned? Are you ready to show off and perform all the practice that we did? So I really like that, man. Well, do you have anything else? Any parting words?
Love your neighbor, wear your mask.
Wear your mask, exactly. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, the hair's getting long, getting rowdy. I don't know when that's going to go away, but that's fine. I want to say this week we had VBS in a box. I think Anne's going to come on and do the sermon talk back next week and kind of talk about that. But there's going to be a closing worship for that, and then all of the VBS videos will still be on our YouTube. So if maybe your grandkids come into town in the coming weeks, I'm sure you can find those lessons and craft, and you could probably reach out to Anne and she could send you something. Or if your kids were out of town and missed VBS and they're going to be in town this week, I'm sure you could reach out to Anne and make that happen, and those resources will still be available. That is one bonus about this whole COVID thing, is that we're recording more things, and so we can kind of do them at different times. And so I wanted to make sure people knew that. And then, Andrew, is there anything else that youth are doing that we need to be aware of, or that the larger congregation can help in supporting you and youth with?
We got some things cooking, but they're not fully there yet, so we'll let folks know when it comes up. But movie night this Sunday.
Movie night. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, Andrew, thanks so much for doing this, buddy. I'll see you tomorrow when we film the thing for VBS.
Sweet. See you then, man.
See ya. Bye.